Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm just going to get set up for a live demo in a second. So, hello, good morning. Welcome to Utrecht. I'm April Edwards, and I'm a developer, and I work for GitHub. I've been at GitHub for about 7 months. Prior to that, I was at Microsoft. I've worked in engineering, I've worked in the technical pre-sales, I've worked in all sorts of places at Microsoft, and I've been in tech for a pretty long time. But we're redefining that developer experience, mostly to increase developer productivity and increase their happiness. And this starts with GitHub Copilot. So let's go on a little bit of a whistle-stop history tour of how Copilot began. We wanted to bring AI to the market pretty early. How many of you used GitHub Copilot in its early rendition days? How many of you loved it in its early days? OK, a few of you. That's good. So I want to share with you things we've learned in our journey at GitHub and how we're using Copilot today. We are making GitHub the AI-powered developer platform. We want to enable you to build, scale, and deliver secure software. The things that we're seeing is we're giving these developers these tools, and they're able to deliver much better code, much faster, all this great stuff, but that's bubbling up through our organizations. Not just the developers, but moving through the organization and their impact. So we know that 55% of developers are having a more faster completion rate of their code. So what they do is they give a developer a task. No Copilot, no AI, bare metal tools. Let's say it takes that developer 8 hours. We then ask that developer to complete it with GitHub Copilot and then measure the time to completion. So we know that the agility of our developers increases by over 55% when using Copilot. So those are hard, fast numbers we can bring to our teams. So we have a vision at GitHub, and we've called it Copilot X. We want to bring Copilot and Copilot X to the entire development cycle. So the Copilot X is our vision for the future. We're going to make a lot of announcements around this. So you want to keep your eyeballs on social media and the GitHub blog, and you will see a lot of this get announced. We also have something called GitHub Copilot Voice, where you can have a voice-to-code experience with GitHub Copilot chat. One of the best pieces of advice I got from any manager was code is play. And I love playing. It's how I learn. I'm a very tactile person. I like to learn by doing. But I will go into my code base, and when I traditionally use GitHub Copilot, I type in my code, and it will generate something for me. Now, I do apologize. I am on my Wi-Fi. There we go. And I'd have to accept what it told me. Now, this is right, but is it what I want? There's no context around it. It's really helpful, but it gave me an answer, and I may or may not like its response. And very often not, I didn't like it, because I didn't have control. I couldn't ask it. And sometimes, especially as a junior developer, you're going, why did it give me that? What's the context behind it? I need to know more. So I have some expressions here. I want to ask it, explain the code. So let's see what it comes up with. So it makes sense. It's telling me we have 3 regular expressions. It tells us we have those 3 regular expressions in Python, obviously, and it's pulling through some code. Let's see, OK, this one's validating phone numbers, this one's validating strong passwords, and this one's validating email addresses. OK, that makes more sense, right? We all understand what the code's doing? Cool. I got into a heated debate with a colleague recently, and she's like, oh, I don't like code comments. I'm like, but how do you know what you're doing and why you're doing it? How do you explain your code? How do you document it? So this is good, but I think we can do a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the code, and I'm going to ask it to separate out the validation functions and comments for me. I want it a little bit cleaner. Now, I can type out GitHub Copilot, write some unit tests for me, or I can hit the / command in GitHub Copilot chat. I can ask it for help. I can ask it to simplify my code. I can ask it to fix or explain. I want to ask it to write tests for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and enter. And it's going to generate a whole set of unit tests for me that I can input into a new test file, save that test file, so I don't break my code again. And now I have unit tests. So I love using this to generate my unit tests. So I have a place to get started with my code. I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot more of a Python-specific question, because Python is not my strongest language, so I need to skill up on it. And I'm going to ask, how does variable visibility work in Python? So GitHub Copilot is explaining to me my question. So I have some understanding, and I can take my education a little bit further. It also gives me an example of how this works. So I can read the output, I can understand, and I can see it, and it generates some test code for me. Now, it already gave me an example. In the old days of Copilot, I'd have to ask it to give me an example. It wouldn't give me one. But now it gives you an example to illustrate the point. Now, something I want to be really conscious of. This is not a sentient being that we're speaking to. It has boundaries. So I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot, who is the best speaker in the keynote? I mean, we all know the answer, but let's ask Copilot. It's not allowed to make opinions and judgments. It can only provide the context in which the boundaries we provide it, and that's with the code that we've given it with Python. So thank you all for today. I appreciate your patience. I will be at the GitHub booth and roaming around. I'll have more active demos going. Come feel free to ask questions, and we have free swag.